Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dads on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co-host, Keith Bogan.
My lord, how are you?
And Doug Hammondike.
Good afternoon.
Chad is once again on assignment this week, and we'll be back with us hopefully next week. Actually, sorry, no, 2 weeks, because we are off next week for Mother's Day and other such things. So today we're going to be talking about triggers and things like that. Triggers meaning, words or phrases or gestures that can be used to construe a connotation to some people that it means something or could mean something else other than its original intent. One such instance is on Jeopardy. There was apparently the other night a trigger which represents the 3% symbol, but to me, that such trigger is the circle game as well. It's a game, basically, essentially, you do that and you're calling somebody an asshole, send them a picture. There's all kinds of stuff, all kinds of ways to do it. It's usually below your waist, but in the connotation, in some other ways, the asshole game is the circle game, whatever you want to call it. In fact, I think that was the first thing that I thought when that came up as a trigger, that in some cases, in fact, in one of the cases where it was supposedly a trigger for racism, it was I think it was legitimately somebody who was aware of the circle game and legitimately essentially showed the whole world the circle game. He basically called the entire world a bunch of assholes. So, who wants to kick us off here?
Well, I'd like to kick you.
Yeah,
You're fired.
But with that said, I've done my own research. Well, I don't want to get too deep into any one particular topic within trigger words or phrases, but you triggered me by talking about the guy on Jeopardy, because at first I had the same reaction most people do. Oh, come on, what did he do and what was misinterpreted? And then I read some articles about it and I watched what he did. It wasn't just the 3 fingers up and that it was tapping it to the chest, which apparently is the complete symbol of the white supremacist group, 3%ers. I'm not saying this guy did it intentionally. I mean, his explanation was he was on the show for the 4th time. He had won 3 times, and that he was showing three victories so far with his fingers. Now, most of us, I don't know, in the world I come from, when I want to say 3, I do this. I don't do this. That's not 3 to me. So I have my misgivings. It's one of those things you're never going to be able to prove. And, but something, 6 months, if something came out that pointed him toward that group, it wouldn't surprise me, because it was a very, very specific way of manipulating his hand. It wasn't just resembling it. It was that symbol.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second before we continue and show you something.
Please.
I can't do that.
So you weren't on Jeopardy.
Hold on. Let me tell you. I am using every bit of force that I have in my body and in my fingers to put that finger up to make the 3. I have to do that to make 3. I cannot physically put my 3 fingers up at once completely.
Can you do it again, Keith? What were you supposed to do?
So the way the research I'm seeing it, it's not just, this is the symbol, but palm to you, tapping your chest. Lower down, but so if I was gonna do, I would be tapping my chest here, which is exactly what the individual on Jeopardy did. So it's a very specific, not just what you do with your hand, but where it goes, what direction it goes, the tapping, all that sort of thing. It's like a code sequence. And he may have totally accidentally replicated it. I'm not ready to convict the individual or let him go. It just seems to be a very strange sequence. Like I said before, look, if I want to, look at somebody and say, hey, look, 3, I'm going to put 3 fingers up like this, even if I'm struggling, like Jason does. I'm not going to instinctively put 3 other fingers up and do a circle. That's just not, that doesn't make any sense.
It's a comfort thing to me. I have to. It's a comfort thing. I cannot, like I said, I'm not going to put myself in pain trying to do it.
You have that problem on the other hand, Jason?
Somewhat, not quite, but somewhat.
Okay, so you would use the other hand.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm left-handed. My first thought is to use my left hand, dumbass.
My first thought was to use my right hand. I'm right-handed, so I guess that makes sense. I'll buy that. I never knew you were left-handed. How long have I known you? What's up with that?
So is Sadie.
Well, I feel bad that she has a resemblance to Dad, but we'll deal with it.
Hold on, gotta put you on mute. Go ahead, continue.
Anyway, Doug, you were about to say something. I saw you putting up your 3 fingers too. What were you trying to say?
that was just seeing if I could do it. I don't know.
Wait, can you do 4?
Yeah, I could do 4. Of course, I could do that. But no, I practiced that for a long time and raising my one eyebrow, so.
Yes.
No, I was going to say that one of the issues that I have is with this, as well as just generally, is intent. And in lieu of what Keith has just said, I think that the intent, if we were just to say without thinking about this too much, is that, like you mentioned, he did it on the first show. He did number 2 on the second show, and then 3 on the third show, which to me would be intent. And he was just all of a sudden like cascaded as, doing a white supremacist type hand gesture. And the letter that was spewed by the 600 past Jeopardy contestants, which went into unbelievable details. And this article was picked up by tons of organizations before he, because initially he refused to really apologize. And that was their thing. Well, even if he's saying that he didn't, he never apologized. I don't know why he had to apologize. I think those people, in theory, should apologize to him for cascading him as, a racist or white supremacist, which could ruin a lot of things, coming forward.
Oh, absolutely.
What?
Absolutely, Ken. All you do is accuse somebody in this world, and their life can be ruined. Absolutely.
So I just feel that a lot of times we jump to this conclusion quite quickly, and the media, if it'll sell, Jesus gonna laugh, will sell a story or so. Of course, they're going to publish it, and the idea of thinking through some of these things, I don't think that is readily kept in mind.
So, I want to say one last thing on this. In this gentleman's defense, I want to say, by the way, and that is, in the research I did, he very clearly said, I did 1 finger after my first win, 2 fingers after my second, but none of the articles I could find showed video from that. Now, how's that possible? What you could make an argument that says mainstream media just wants a story, so they're not going to show the proof that it's not a story.
Well,
Jeopardy has admitted that they've already altered a bunch of their episodes based on either racist comments or hand gestures that's been on the show throughout the past 10 years.
Interesting. I had not heard that part. That's very interesting.
Well, the old saying in the media is, if it bleeds, it leads. So that was taken into context, obviously. Clearly, I'm going to guess the last couple of days, and it kind of has. It's been a slow news week, so that's probably why it was picked up. Now, with that said, there's been instances of this before, like I said, and I remember when the whole thing started, there was a picture that came out shortly after of President Obama when it was started, of just it actually started, the big media blitz on it was from Trump, I believe, and it was basically that variation of it, where it was up here, it wasn't not anywhere near there. It was up here, and it kind of was like that, where he was just like, okay, that whole thing started, that comment, and then within a couple of hours, they started putting all these pictures of black leaders doing the same thing, which included President Obama. So it's not exactly, yes, it's got connotations towards it, but some of it is clearly, it's a little bit ticky-tack kind of. It's a certain way of doing it, a certain variation of doing it. Some of it is a stretch, for sure, is a better way to put it.
I would totally agree with that. So I'm eager to talk about the conversation that you and I, Jason, had that inspired this topic. And that is a conversation I had with a very close friend of mine who happens to be a black woman. And I'm trying to remember specifically, but we were kidding around about some stuff. I was going to have a doctor's appointment, and I made a joke about, after I croak, the doctor will call you and let you know that I'm dead. It was, silly stuff back and forth like that. And the last thing I said to her was, he'll deliver my prone body to you, something like that. And what she said back to me, I would never have seen coming, and I can't because I don't have the experience, but she said that in the black community, the word prone is a trigger word. And
Sure.
A lot of it comes out of the George Floyd killing.
Oh, absolutely.
But apparently some of it comes from even before that. And, that's another big example, I guess. But that I wanted to bring that up because trigger words are in part that, because there are whole groups of people, and I don't mean 5 or 10, I mean races of people and nationalities of people that don't understand that a word can trigger a particular group. When I was a human resources manager for Toys R Us back in around 1995 or 6, somewhere in there, I forget what it was. We had about 400 people in season in our distribution center, and a lot of them were temporary employees. And every now and then we used to have fights. This would happen again, by the way, later in another company, not a distribution facility, but more of a corporate office, but again with an hourly workforce where people, and this was my opinion, I think we just lost Jason. Hold on. There is no Jason on our call. What do you know? I'm going to try to stall here on our live podcast just so I can make sure Jason comes back at some point.
Yeah, well,
there we go. He's coming back in. Apparently my story was really boring to Jason, so whatever. I think he's finally returning. Should I leave him on mute? What do you think? I am the host. I could leave him on mute. Anyway, to finish the story, there were a number of people of color in both populations, and they would frequently fight with each other. And there was a lot of behavior about, you're invading my space, you don't belong here, you don't belong here. And I didn't understand it. As a much younger Caucasian individual, it took a while for them to explain to me that some of the people in that group were Jamaican, who will absolutely not, they refuse to be identified as Black. And to them, being called African American or Black or people of color, even though they are very dark of skin, they are very highly offended by that. So that was a huge trigger for them. And I to this day, I mean, what was that, 25 years ago? It's still, I understand it, from a conceptual standpoint, but it would be like, Jason, you and I are arguing over one of us isn't white, and I don't know. I struggled with it for a long time, not in a negative way. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But it definitely was a huge trigger there. Very, very, very strong.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting when you talk about prone, because there's two positions when you're on the ground. There's on your back and on your stomach. Now, there's an interesting thing of the word used when you're laying on your back is supine. It's a position. I mean, it's a position discussed in jiu-jitsu, in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You like, if you read or watch a video, they'll mention it as the supine position. When you're on your stomach, they'll kind of use different, they'll usually say face down. They won't use prone. They don't use prone position that much in certain types of things like that. So I just find it interesting that you have a word that has that kind of sophistication to it of supine, and then you have prone. So I do see that point. I do. Like, you would think that they would have come up with a better word than that to describe that position than prone. So there's another thing of, when it comes to prone, is prone is something that when there are certain conditions, certain disorders, certain diseases that African Americans have a higher rate of. We all know this. Another word for that is being prone to those conditions. So that could have something to do with that. That could be something that is overlooked. Now, getting back to Jeopardy guy, and this is something that I thought of when I heard this, of contestants on Jeopardy are so well versed of knowledge to be on the show. You think this guy would have known that? Maybe. It's just a little stupid little thought that popped into my head, but yeah. There are trigger words that I believe in a lot of the cases, in some cases I should say, trigger words have their connotations in racism. I think that goes without being said. But there are obviously other trigger words for other things like transgenders and people of different sexual orientation. There's triggers like that. Sure. And I could see that. I mean, it's a reason why I think that the word African American is used. I could see a problem with people of you black being a trigger word. Sure. To me, it's just I have a tendency to use African American. It's just second nature at this point to use African American for me.
I think we were raised in a society where we were taught as white people that was the polite
Sure.
way of making the reference, and then it became black more recently. And
No.
I struggle with the transition.
I think it's the other way around. It was black before, and then it became African American.
And
I don't
but
know.
it's returned to black. It's by capitalizing black now, it's returned to black.
Maybe you could have a point.
By the way, so we all have our own trigger words. I mean, hey, listen, my trigger word is marriage. I don't know about you.
I think that
if looks could fucking kill, Keith. If looks could kill, you would be dead.
I take it Elise is in the background.
I didn't say it. He did. I didn't agree. I laughed. I didn't agree.
I am begging for a short life here. It's okay.
I think that part of the problem here and what we're talking about is that there's different words and language and, all kinds of society, run on understood words. And, a lot of words are taught in vocabulary when you're in school. So what happens when these words change, and new words are introduced? That's where we're coming to the problem. We as adults, we can reject them. We could use them. We might not even be aware of them. Like my parents, like if you were to say cisgender, they have no idea what you're talking about. Even recently we had to look it up ourselves to understand what that word means. And for dads, we have to either figure out where we're going to learn these words. Is it from our kids or is it us teaching our kids how to use them? And sometimes people get frustrated and they say the wrong things, So it's all on how we use our language, whether in confidence, publicly, I don't know. And knowing what the words mean before you say them, because so many times people say things and label people incorrectly, both in the news, people just shooting their mouth off out of annoyance. They just say things, and they don't understand that words have meanings. And when they get it wrong, people can adopt that because that's what they heard. People with the loudest voice have to feel outraged a lot of times. And when you become outraged, it's just because you think that people aren't listening to unless you are outraged. And that's a wrong way to go down. And then people become obsessed with just the exceptions, and it's no way to talk or debate or even have a conversation once we've reached this point.
Right. That's a good point. I don't know if you guys remember. I'm sure you do. In the 70s, there was a skit on SNL. I think you know what's Doug. I think you already know what skit I'm getting at.
Well, there's about 1,000 that you could name that would probably be triggers in today's society.
Well, let's just go right for the jugular and mention the big one. Comedian Richard Pryor is interviewing for a job with Chevy Chase. And they do word association. Remember that skit?
I don't remember the specifics, but I know they did it, and I know it was outrageously funny at the time.
Yes, it was. Not to Richard, but the thing is, it wasn't the words Richard has said 1,000 times, or had said, may have got us assault. Richard said 1,000 times. It was not what he was saying. It was who was saying it that bothered him. He could not stand Chevy Chase. And that was before they did the skit. But he agreed to it because he saw the comedy. But at the end of it, Richard's reaction to the last one, where his nostrils are flaring, that was a real reaction. And it was because, like I said, it wasn't because of what Chevy said. Because he said if it was Piscopo, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. Or if it was Bill Murray or somebody else, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. He said Chevy had a problem with it.
Why
Because
did he not like him? Did anybody ever talk about why they didn't like each other?
Some things had gone down prior to that. I forgot exactly what it was or when it was, but actually, Chevy was not the most liked comedian at the time by anybody. In fact, Bill Murray couldn't stand him and almost didn't do the scene in Caddyshack with Chevy because he hated him so much. But they got through it. He said even when after that, he said it took years for him to really talk to Chevy again because Chevy big timed SNL, the whole staff. Chevy Chase actually has made a lot of enemies. Two other enemies that he made were the two guys that started the band Steely Dan for a while. Donald Fagen did not talk to him for a very long time after he made some of the comments he made. Because Chevy once said that he quit a shitty jazz band to go be a comedian because it was a shitty jazz band, and two of the guys left and formed Steely Dan. So, but yeah, Chevy Chase was not the most liked person at all. It wasn't Richard. Richard wasn't the only one that had a problem with it.
So what you're getting at, if I'm not mistaken, is that sometimes trigger words or expressions are triggers more because of who says them as opposed to
Very well could be, yes. Yes, very well could be. I'm not saying you could, walk up to, well, okay. I will give you another example of an odd situation that happened in a wrestling organization and actually happened on national TV. Okay. It was a wrestler by the name of Booker T. He was a young up-and-coming superstar in WCW, and they had either just won or were about to win. Him and his brother Stevie were about to go win the tag team titles. They may have just won them. Well, very young, I think he was 21 or 22 at the time, Booker T, in an interview, starts talking about Hulk Hogan. And he has his character is that of, I guess you could call it a street thug. And Booker is African American. Booker, without missing a beat, kind of decided to go into his natural reaction to something, forgot what he was doing, forgot where he was, and turned around and said, "Hulk Hogan, we coming for you." N-word. Live on national TV.
Spoken by a black man.
Wait, there's more to it.
Interesting.
Booker, thought he was going to get fired and all this stuff. And Hulk walked up to him and said, "But I'm a good," and Booker laughed. And that was, I think Hogan said it and they kind of understood it because he had already done it, and they just, it was a way to tell him, it's okay, kid, just don't worry and move on. Now, several years later, Vince McMahon, the owner of WWE, walks up to John Cena and says, looks at John Cena and goes, "What's up, Mike?"
Wow.
On national TV. He shakes Cena's hand. Cena has this dumbfounded look on his face. They pan the camera over, and who's standing there but Booker T, who then turns around, looks at the camera, and says, "Tell me he didn't just say that." Fade to black.
So you don't think any of that was staged?
It absolutely was staged.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's your answer of knowing that somebody's going to say something and it being different, or not just knowing somebody's going to say something, because the script was okay. Obviously, Booker knew what was coming. It wasn't like it was Booker complete, like I said, was in on it. He knew it was scripted. He had to be there at that moment. So the whole thing was completely scripted, like I said. Completely different. He had no problem with it. Richard Pryor, on the other hand, like I said, it can be absolutely be who's saying it more than what they're saying. So
As a different side, I was
Go ahead.
gonna. Oh, go ahead, Keith, if you
No,
want.
no. Okay.
No, because this is gonna be totally change what we're talking about now.
Well,
So-
I mean, for me, I mean, and that would probably need to do that, but boy, I'm losing my train of thought. All right, I'm passing the baton. Never mind. It's gone.
I was just going to say that sometimes also words and trigger words are created, and we see a lot of that in communist semantics and indirect and direct propaganda, and how you invalidate a certain argument and create your own argument without ever validating it. And it, through a long time, a lot of different words have become triggers within the world. And like sometimes when you think of the word like capitalism, you think of, regardless of how it's used, you immediately think of the United States, and emotionally you think, it's probably a bad thing. Or even now with the word like social equity and social justice, and emotionally, as soon as you hear those words, without really understanding even what those words mean, you automatically think it must be something good. And these are more things that we see popping up and used in regular subjects today. So I thought that was also, something that needed to be mentioned as well. But
Fascinating.
well, there's another thing that out there is there's beliefs from some people that that are definitely triggers as well. I will use one for instance where I had a back and forth with a guy who tried telling me that African Americans were not capable of being child molesters. And he was using this statement as a defense for somebody saying that, oh, it's not possible because they can't do that. The man he was defending was R. Kelly. Yeah, he was using that argument to say that R. Kelly was innocent. This was after R. Kelly's breakdown on TV, the screaming match that where he was screaming at the reporter after that documentary thing came out. Still trying to defend R. Kelly because they're not capable of it. So yeah, things like that can definitely be triggers as well. I mean, I've heard other ones, and some of them you kind of just laugh it off. But then there's an interesting things where I have heard continuing on. I've heard comedians one comedian by the name of Mike Birbiglia. He's a pretty funny comedian. And one of his bits was the discussion of pejorative. It was a discussion of pejorative terms, but he put it in a really funny way. And it was a conversation. It was a thing of using the word cracker to describe white people, and it was kind of using the A and using the ER for another word as well. That came up, and an African-American gentleman walked up to him after he had performed, and he turned around and said, "What's up, my cracker?" Sorry, cracker. He said it with an A. And he said, "You can't," and then Birbiglia, without missing a beat, turned around and said, "You can't say that. You can't use that." And just went on a 5-minute little diatribe with the guy. And he said, "I was laughing the whole time." He said, the guy got it, and it was just hysterical. He said his reaction to it was, he said, but it was kind of strangely, it was a conversation that needed to be had because we were in such a time of great racial tension, he said. So with this one, he said to me, this one particular gentleman, this kind of helped. It broke down a wall for, even if it was just me and him, that the wall got broken down of having any kind of racial tension was gone. He said just immediately with that one, and he said it was a snap. It was just, I knew my reaction as soon as he said it. He said, I didn't even miss a beat. I just came out with that reaction. He said the guy was laughing his head off. So, I mean, but yeah, obviously there's other triggers. Now, let's play devil's advocate here. Okay. What is a trigger for you? Besides, I know you kind of took a swipe at marriage, Keith, which went over like a lead balloon in this house.
I love you, Elise.
What to you are some trigger words? Or trigger gestures as well.
I think I'm better at the words. Trigger words are going to trigger different people based on personal experience. So for me, beyond the obvious things like the N-word, or being a Jewish person, the K word, and a variety of those things, outside of the realm of background and religion and things like that, when I hear someone talk about a plane crash, because that was a big thing in my family, I can feel myself close down for a moment, and I have to reopen myself up to continue in with the conversation if someone says that perfectly innocently, not knowing that I might have history there. I mean, just the word gun is actually a trigger for me. Okay. Because I happen to be one of those people who's very, very not in favor of the Second Amendment. We'll put it that way. And always happy to discuss it, but I'm not a fan of it. So, boy, there's probably a number of things that I think about. Interesting in our society that when we're asked about what trigger words are, we will frequently default to things like race and background and such. But there are other things that, not that it's PTSD, but it could be PTSD for a lot of people. Everybody's had something happen to them: car crashes, cancer, medical issues, things like that. Right now, I mean, I have one of my brothers is ill with cancer, and so it's a trigger for me. I'm much more sensitive and much more heightened to respond when I hear the word than I was, say 3 years ago. And I'm sure we all have stuff like that.
Well, I can remember. I can remember one conversation you and I had. I guess it was January of last year. I don't know if you remember. It was probably sometime around noon because, and the news had just broken. It was before we actually started doing the show. The news had just broken not too long before that about the helicopter crash in which Kobe Bryant and Gianna were killed. And I don't know if you remember the conversation we had, but I think both of us were pretty shaken up at that point. I'm pretty sure I was crying. I will think I openly admit that. And I'm pretty sure if you weren't, you were very close. And I think looking back now, I think that there was a little bit to the reaction of what you discussed happening to your father. Possibly, maybe that was possibly creeping in your thought process as well at the time. I was not aware that had happened to your father. You didn't tell me until we were on the show a couple months later. So
It's not something you always go around talking about, that's for sure.
No.
But it took me years to get to a point where I didn't openly tell people because it's not exactly a good conversation starter, but
Yep.
I have a vague memory of the conversation, but I have more of a memory of the cloud around it. The cloud that sort of enveloped me when I heard about the crash, and immediately, your mind starts going somewhere else. And I was triggered into a whole bunch of different memories that had nothing to do with Kobe or the other 13 people that were on the helicopter. Today, I mean, literally 2 hours ago, I'm sitting out in front of my house working on a project, and a plane flies overhead, and my gaze watches the plane the entire way across the sky, which is about 45 seconds. Now, part of that is my own experience, and part of that is 9/11.
Yep.
And people are definitely triggered differently by things about 9/11 because of, for the most part, if you didn't live in the New York or Washington area, your memories are sort of distant memories now. But for those of us who were here and saw the smoke in the sky and saw the buildings burning and things like that, we are definitely triggered differently. So,
Right.
For
I still do that too.
Yeah, for a couple of different reasons. Every time a plane goes by, I have to consciously stop myself from watching it.
Mhm.
It's like I'm sure. Listen, we've spent 5 minutes talking about this particular thing, and for our many adoring fans on the podcast right now who are watching this tonight, my father died in a small plane crash back in 1981. Where he was one of the 2 pilots on the plane. So to explain that a little bit without being mysterious.
Wait, what?
What was your question, Jason?
What did you just say?
I said he died in a small plane crash in 1981, and he was one of the 2 pilots.
You didn't tell us that.
I'm sorry, I probably didn't get into any detail, but what did I forget to tell you?
You never told us how he died. You told the story you told us was about the plane crashing into the building into the hotel.
So it was his second plane crash, but he was a person in a hotel in 1967 when a jetliner, a 747, I believe, crashed into his hotel and killed everybody except him. Yes. I'm sorry. That's the thing is, when you talk about stuff like this, sometimes you blank out on the memory of it, and I know we talked about it in a show a few months ago, but the details completely escape me because I kind of bury them again because it's what you instinctively do. The first crash was 1967.
You said he died young, but that was it. You never went into okay.
Okay,
now I really get it.
Full disclosure, June 27th, 1981, he was one of 2 pilots in a 4-seater. The other pilot was also our family dentist who had just filled a cavity in my head a few hours earlier. And the third person was a close family friend. And we'll never know what happened. You know what a trigger for me is? The name of the town of Manahawkin. For those of you who are in the area, that's where it happened. So it doesn't matter what the context is. You know, if I'm driving up the Garden State Parkway, or if I'm just having a conversation about somebody who went down the shore, if that name comes up, I immediately tense because I know that's where it happened. The second one, the one where he was in the hotel was in New Orleans, so totally different part of the country. But we all have these experiences where something's happened to us. You know, we've lost a relative. Maybe it was where the relative died. You know, when my father was being treated from the first plane crash, he was at St. Barnabas Hospital in Livingston. So anytime I hear somebody who's getting treatment for anything at St. Barnabas, boom, my thoughts go back to when I was 4 years old. That's when it happened. So that, you know, there are all sorts of triggers. And I think the most important thing to get out of our conversation today is that each one of us has triggers that we have memories that aren't necessarily great memories, but they're going to make us phase out for a moment or miss stuff because we're thinking about our memory, or we might say something that's inappropriate because we got distracted by something that triggered us. And, you know, we run across that sort of thing every day. You know, we're driving down the highway and somebody drives stupidly in front of us. We don't know why they're driving stupidly. What did they hear a song on the radio that made them sad about an ex-girlfriend? Did they hear, did somebody text them something, that reminded them of a past relative or something like that? Did they just get fired from their job? It's so tempting to have road rage. God knows I feel it all the time when I'm on the road. But the people who do stupid stuff around me, it's taken me years to train myself to realize I've got to stop first and ask why they said what they said or did what they did. No matter how offensive it is to me. What caused it? What did they do something that was out of their character because they were burdened with something? This is one of these great podcasts where we could be doing this for hours, days, weeks. There's so many stories. Jason, I know you, Jason, better than I know Doug, but Doug, we've gotten to know each other pretty good already. Listen, Jason, I know some of your stories. I know some of your triggers for sure. And we all have them. We all have them. Some of us have dealt with them better than others, and hats off to you, Jason, for a lot of the things that have come up in your past that you've dealt with very well. Sometimes I wonder if I've ever really faced down my demons, if you will. I've been told by some people that I haven't. And it probably impacts how I react to certain things. But when you deal with triggers, when you have your own triggers, it's sometimes easier to stop and think about what else is happening to other people that might cause them to behave in ways you don't necessarily like right away.
Doug?
Impossible to follow that up.
Doug, come on, you're a master of words. You can handle it.
Sometimes you can't even get them out after that, Keith. I got to agree with him.
I just mean that what Keith was saying is so point on that anything that I would say now would kind of detract from that, because I was thinking solely very simplistically on trigger words and didn't really think of how certain things will cause me to react, more or less as words that I pick up that annoy me. So there's a kind of a difference there, and I think I'd rather just leave it at that.
Well, it's been a good therapy session. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that.
Because now you got me thinking about something totally different than what I wanted to say before you started.
Well, along those lines, I think that when people have conversations like this and they explore different things that have triggered issues in other people's lives, not only does it help us get to know each other better, but it also helps us to stop and think, like I said, what is it that's impacted the other person that might, are they just a jackass? Are they, and we know people like this. Are they like that all the time, or is today just a rough day and that's why they appear to be a total jerk? Which, by the way, is an excuse I use pretty much every day because I appear to be a total jerk all the time. It's a good dodge, if you will. But it's helped me. It's helped me not only in my life but in my career. In human resources, the idea of being able to stop, think about it, ask questions. Did you really mean what you said? Are you really a jerk? Or come on, why is today a bad day? So it's given me an enormous amount of patience, I think, that a lot of people have seen. But to invoke only half of another joke, it was something my ex-wife never saw. She never understood that variety of patience in me. And it was a very big difference of opinion in the way we would look at things. So her fast reaction to judgment sometimes was a trigger for me, because it was frustrating that I could never get across to her the message of patience and to try to look at things through other people's eyes.
Right.
She would staunchly dispute that here, and she'd probably slap me in all seriousness if she was part of this podcast. It's just my viewpoint of how I thought she looked at things. But purely for myself, I've learned a heck of a lot. People who have walked through the cancer wards of children at children's hospitals, they come out with a completely different perspective and suddenly a whole different set of values about. They forget about the road rage people and all the people who are temporarily pissed off and have been triggered temporarily because they're a lot bigger things. I guess I've had some of those experiences myself, close to home.
And sometimes things that trigger you, you could be triggered initially, but yet act a different way. Because I was gonna say, off the top of my head, like one of those things is like the word entitlement. Like right away, I my conservative side, and I am cheap, man. I right away think, how are we gonna pay for that? What is the benefit and all? But yet at the same time, I am also somebody that is very generous and very good with my time with helping. And like when I think about it, like we're all called to look for help or help out, the people in our community, people that are the unseen and all. And I believe that, and I really work and strive at, my whole family does, to make sure that other people are taken care of. And I understand that and all. But initially, when I hear that word, like right away, it brings that other thoughts to my mind, So it could be twofold too, like how they think. But when Keith was talking about how we react and all, I was thinking more or less sometimes how I could, when you either, like you were saying, your mood, because if you're tired, sometimes I could be very quick to react nastily or hastily to, out of annoyance because I'm tired. But when normally I could be very patient and good, and sometimes that side of me is not very kind.
Right.
And I was just thinking about sometimes, things that either I can't even think of exactly what, but it could be phrases or ideas that just like get me off, and whether it's like, I don't know, something that, usually like something that like the way that I'd have to come up with some better examples of things that like my mom will say and stuff just could get me set off. Like especially my mom, I think that just, and then when you sit back and think about it, you're like, really, what was the big deal? But initially you just get that hot-headed, like, strike right through your body, you know?
Okay. Okay. Let me interject a second. Here's a question. And this will maybe prove a point or not. What if dad would have said it to you? Or your brother?
Well, definitely my brother. I don't think my dad, most of the stuff he says, or even if he said the same thing, would have probably more or less rolled off my back. My brother, on the other hand, that probably would strike the same thing, same
So
response.
your father could say something and your brother could say the same thing and you're going to have a different reaction, right?
Yeah.
That's the point of where I was going with the Richard Pryor thing. Yeah. Ed.
Which one of us is supposed to be talking right now?
Oh, okay. I don't know if you were done, Doug, or
Sorry, I was distracted by something.
so I will say something that shouldn't come as much of a surprise. And I think Keith alluded to that earlier. I think that's part of what he was alluding to. But I will definitely say that over the last, let's say, 11 months, what triggers me has changed. And my reactions to the triggers have changed. And I don't think there's any reason to hide the reason why. And I don't think I have. I don't think I've completely discussed it, but I've alluded to it for sure a couple of times. And anybody who's actually seen this show from the very beginning can kind of put two and two together and realize that nearly a year ago, something happened in my life. And if you go back and watch some of the shows, my face is pretty messed up there for a couple of moments, for a couple of shows. I'm not going to get into exact details of it, but for a very long time, I have had my struggles with alcoholism. So over the last 11 months, I've been through treatment. I've been through AA, not through, going, still currently going to AA, and the meetings and the people, my network and the friends that I have met, and these guys as well. Well, obviously, the four of us do know how to push each other's buttons. We like to push each other's buttons, but I will openly admit that to an extent, we are probably the only people that can get away with pushing certain buttons without getting told to fuck off. Now, getting back to what I've been through, as I've learned to control my drinking and keep it completely under control. I have been sober. I hit the 11-month mark yesterday. I've been sober for 11 months. The triggers definitely have changed significantly, and my reactions to it. I am not anywhere near as easily triggered, because even in AA, there have been some goings on that there's problems and people with problems that you're talking about literally a curb this high, and people just seem to can't not get over it. I mean, I've seen people get triggered by it, and I've seen some pretty rough situations come out of it. And I think to an extent, the reactions to what have gone on for the last year with COVID, there's definitely triggers in there for sure. Again, there's been some nasty things said by people on social media, in the media, in politics, clearly, that this is a different world, and it's going to take some adjusting to get over these triggering problems and issues that we're going through in this country, on this planet. So yeah, but one thing that Ed is preached heavily, besides from the fact of time takes time, that's a big phrase that is used in AA. One of the things, and I've said it, you guys are probably sick of hearing it, and I probably have said it about as many times as Doug is blaming the media for something. Progress, not perfection. That's a big thing, and that is something that is big to live by in general, just in life, and that it really is striving. Perfection does not exist. If people do not understand that, perfection is a myth. No one's perfect, ever. Everyone has screwed up something in their life, at least once, even the smallest little thing. No one's perfect. To say that, oh, I'm perfect. No, you're not. You're full of shit is what you are. But yeah, I to an extent, I still can't believe we're stuck in the situation we're stuck in here without seemingly any progress happening right now, especially at times. There was no progress. It's taken a while to get to where we are, but things are changing for the better to an extent. Yes. For the worse to an extent. Yes. We are kind of on this weird, almost middle ground at times. But I know for me, speaking personally, talking about progress, not perfection, the girls go back to school 5 days a week starting tomorrow. Half days, but they will be in school all 5 days this week. Not starting this week. I believe Friday is, I think they're home for field day, some kind of Zoom field day type thing, but there's other circumstances around that. Basically, it's because there's a bunch of teachers that will not be available for school on Friday in district. But yeah, that's a sign of progress. And I will say that some of the triggers and some of the issues that are going on have lessened in our area, but there are issues that still will not be addressed till September. I know, like for me, at least still, have not stopped working since the pandemic started. At least can't go back to work right now because there's no aftercare for the in school yet, and won't be till September. So that's something that, we're still hopefully in the summer, maybe at least a couple more days a week should be able to get back to work, at work. But I mean, she has done yeoman's work to keep what she's doing, keep her job, keep it going, do the stuff she's done remotely. I don't envy my wife and what she's gone through over the last year and almost year and a half now at this point. Year and two, almost. Really a year and 2 months, trending towards by the time this is really over, we'll be a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's where I am at this point as well. Anybody else have anything they want to add before we wrap this up?
What is.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a pretty good way to put it, Doug.
Well put, my friend.
And we are now, I think, probably actually over an hour. I believe, yeah, pretty close, if not right on it, pretty much. This is something I think I think we've accomplished a lot here doing this today, even though we had to move things around a little bit. This is one of the better discussions we've had. It was a good discussion, and it's something that we'll be able to bring up again, because unfortunately triggers are always going to be there.
Very
So
true, my friend. Very true.
from all of us here at Dads on Life, take care, everybody.
Toodaloo.
Have a great week.